I'll keep whatever I have to say very brief, and since it's an interactive session, I'll expect you guys to ask as many questions as you want, and I'm here for some time, so whatever questions you might have, you're more than free to ask. Okay. Sir has already mentioned about what my journey has been, but very briefly, I did my high schooling from Ludhiana. My father works for a bank, so we keep on getting transferred. In class 7th, we came to Ludhiana, and that is the first time when I met sir. I had come to sir to ask about, so I had given this exam called NTSC, the National Talent Search Examination, which happens in class 8th. And I had qualified for the interview, and that is when I met sir for the first time. And he guided me through the process of the interview. And by God's grace and sir's guidance, I was able to clear the exam. But after that, formally, informally, in class, outside the class, for the last 10, 12 years, I have always been in touch with sir. And as sir mentioned that he was the one who always guided me, always constantly motivated me to give the civil services examination. When I went to college, I got a little haywired, and I thought that maybe civil services is not the right path for me. I wanted to become a professor, join academia and write research papers. But that's when sir told me that no, your capabilities will be better served if you go into the services, serve the public, and over there, the kind of career which you want, the kind of work which you want, the proximity will be much better compared to other job profiles. But that's pretty much about me. So I graduated out of Nalsa University of Law in 2019. I did a 5-year course of BA LLB Honours. After 2019, I started my preparation for the civil services examination formally. Why do I say formally? Because informally, it has been in process for a really long time. And I have two people to give credit to that. First is, of course, my parents, specifically my father. I remember we used to stay in Hisar, which is in Haryana. And my father would go to Chandigarh. And of course, he'll get some toys and all, but he'll also get reasoning books. So every Sunday, me and my younger brother, we would spend our Sunday mornings solving R.S. Agarwal reasoning books. So that's because he realized the importance of having reasoning if you have to give any competitive exam. He himself cleared the bank exam, so he realized that this is something, a skill, which is required not only for all the exams which are out there, but also for your general personality development. And second is, of course, sir. Sir was the first person, along with my school teachers, who told me about the examination, the path which has to be followed, and he kept me on the check, on the guide throughout for the examination. I joined the Junior GK Club. Sir had started this really nice concept called Junior GK Club, where classes used to happen over the weekend, and it wasn't a study session. We will come, sit for 2-3 hours, eat along with sir and the professors, and they would just basically tell us on what is happening around the world. So that was a very good exposure, not only to academia and to what is happening around the world, but also personality development. I remember the man which used to come over there. She used to make us listen to Beatles songs or songs of other English singers and bands, which I did not have exposure to earlier. So while Beatles songs did not really help me clear the exam, it helped me get an additional personality or an additional trait which might be missing in some other people. So I'm very grateful to sir for that. And after that, I was preparing from home. I was doing some online classes, and mostly I was doing a lot of self-study. And apart from that, I was always in touch with Sir Bharti sir, and later on with Umesh sir also, who guided me on what I should be studying, what I should be focusing on, and general life guidance apart from other things. So I gave my first prelims in October 2019. I was able to clear it. Then I wrote the mains, which happened in January 2020. And I was expecting an interview call. The interview call did come. My interview was scheduled for June 2020, but then the second wave came. Because of that, the interview got postponed. My interview happened in September 2020. In 2020. And when the results of the final results came, the final results came on 24th of September. So I had missed the cutoff by 10 marks. Now this was a little dicey because the prelims for next year was scheduled only 1 week from then. So either I had an option to sit and cry about what had happened, but I decided that maybe I should first focus on prelims and then cry about whatever has happened. So I gave the prelims again in October 2021. I was able to successfully clear the prelims, mains, and then the interview happened this year on 17th of May 2022. The results came towards the end of May, and by God's grace and blessings of my elders, I was able to clear the examination with rank 184. So after this, I'll be joining my training for the next 2 years before I get my independent station or independent posting afterwards. If you guys have any question, maybe you can directly ask me questions and I can try to answer that. And I can try to share whatever other wisdom or other little bit of knowledge I might want to have. Couple of caveats which I want to give before sharing my own advice or my own journey is that always remember that everyone has their own journey. There is no one set way of clearing the exam. If every year 700, 800 people are clearing the exam, all of them have their own journeys, right? So what worked for me might not necessarily work for you. So take everything with a pinch of salt. The idea of me giving you some tips is that these are things which worked for me. Maybe you can try incorporating that. If it works for you, well and fine. If it doesn't work for you, remember there are 700 different ways of clearing the exam, right? So always have that thing at the back of the mind. If you guys have any questions, maybe you can ask now and then I can share some other information. Whatever questions you might have, small, big, whatever language you want to ask, be completely free. Please. Can you just introduce yourself? Yeah. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Sure. Right. Right.
And second is when should we start answer writing?
Right. Okay. Right. Right. So, I mean, both of them very good questions. First, regarding note making, I personally made notes and it really helped me. Why do I say that? Let's take an example of one of the basic books which everyone does, right? Something like, say, Spectrum, right? For modern history. Spectrum is 600 pages. Now, if you read Spectrum once and then you have to revise all the 600 pages, it becomes really, really difficult and it's next to impossible to revise it. Also remember that revision is very, very critical for this examination. Now, what I did was that I made notes of Spectrum in about 50 pages of my notebook, double-sided. And I used to just revise that. After reading Spectrum once, I never opened Spectrum again. I just used to revise my own notes. And by now, it has been what, three years now. I have revised those notes almost 25 to 26 times. And still my retention is only 70%. I won't say that everything which is written in the notes I remember, right? I need to keep on revising that, polishing that, have a photographic memory. Now, for example, if a question comes, because I have read the material at least 25, 26 times, I have a photographic memory on what page or what side is this particular point written. So, for example, a lot of chronology questions come in modern history, right? When did Rowlatt Act happen? When did Quit India happen? When did Bengal partition happen? Because now I remember where I've written all of those things, it really helped me in solving all the questions regarding chronology, right? So I think note making is something which you should try to do across for all the subjects. I can also maybe share a little on how you should be making your notes, right? Because a lot of aspirants, including me, had this fear of losing out. Let's say if a particular scheme comes from, a new scheme comes from the government, there are 25, 30 editorials which will come. There will be 25, 30 different coaching institutions which will have their own material, right? Which will be covering it. And because our aim remains that we should not be missing on everything, we try to read all of that. Never do that. I learned this thing in a very bad and in a wrong way. What your approach should be, let's say there's a new scheme comes, the Agniveer scheme has recently come off the government, right? There are editorials in all the newspapers, all the coaching institutes have their own material. You can read all of that, but then try to think about the cost benefit which will come out of it. Let's say you spend one day reading the Agniveer scheme. There is no surety on whether the scheme will come in the exam or not, right? Instead, what you should do is you should read upon 10 schemes and maybe out of those 10 schemes, at least one scheme might come in the exam. Don't read 30 editorials, only read 2 editorials. See how much knowledge do you need to have about each topic. For this, you need to read the previous year questions. Now, if you look at the previous year questions, a question will come as, what is the Agniveer scheme? What are the benefits of it? What are the challenges? And what should the government do, right? So for that, your note making should be that in very small 1 or 2 points, you should say what the Agniveer scheme is. It's basically a scheme where young recruits will be serving in the armed forces for 4 years. You don't need to know anything apart from that. Maybe the age you need to know. That it's what 17 and a half to 23, whatever the age is, that till that time people will be serving. Then you need to look at what are the benefits of it. Now, when you are writing benefits, always try to think from a structured format. Now, what do I mean by a structured format? Whatever topic is there, try to think it from different dimensions. For example, the Agniveer scheme, think of it from a security perspective, right? Now we will have a younger armed force, people of young age, right? Think of it from, say, financial perspective. Presently, the government is spending at least 25% of the army budget only on the pensions. This will cut off, and the additional money can now go to capital outlay. Like we can do more research and defense, we can buy more capital technologies, which earlier was not possible, right? Think of it from youth perspective, that it is giving an avenue to the youth that they can now focus their energies on good things, and after 4-5 years, then they can come back to the society and do their own work, right? This is how you write the benefits. Similarly, think of the challenges. I mean, there's a lot of protest which is going on. Try to understand what are the reasons they are protesting, right? The number of recruitments will probably reduce in the long run and all of those things. And they try to think what are the solutions of it. For example, a good solution can be that maybe we should have some form of exit routes for people who do not get recruited in the army later on, right? So this is how your note making should look like. An advantage it also gives is that your mains answer, your mains question also comes like this. So you can directly copy paste your notes into your mains answer. You don't have to prepare anything else, right? So this is one thing which you can do regarding note making. I'm sorry, what was your second question? Answer writing. Okay. See, answer writing is important. The earlier you start, the better. But when I say the earlier you start, you need to at least know something to write it, right? For example, let's say I don't know anything about economy, and you give me a question on what is fiscal deficit and how should the government try to bridge the gap of the fiscal deficit. Do you expect me to write anything on it? No, right? Or even if I write, I'll be writing some nonsense which is not relevant for the exam purpose. So what your approach can be that you read a particular subject, read a particular topic of that particular subject. After you have read it, then you try to attempt the previous year questions which have been asked on that particular topic. So by now you know at least the base material and you get a flow of answer writing. A lot of people, what they do is that till prelims they will not do any answer writing, and then you only have 3 months to not only learn answer writing but also practice answer writing. And more than learning answer writing, you need to practice answer writing because speed is very integral to the exam, right? So have some, what I used to do is that I used to try at least to write one answer every day since I started my preparation, right? And whatever subject I'll read that day, I'll try to write an answer on it. So by the time the result of the prelims came and mains was only 2 months away, I had a fair idea on how to structure an answer. And then the next 2 months, I only concentrated on improving my speed and improving whatever little gaps are there, right? So try to avoid the mistake of not doing answer writing before prelims. Do limit it, but at least have an understanding on what an answer should look like. Does that answer the question? Okay. What else? It's okay. I mean, please feel absolutely free to ask any question. There is no question which is, which is nonsense or stupid. I have remember that, till 1 week before the results came, I was over here. I had the same questions. Till date, I don't know all the answers. I still have a lot of questions regarding the examination. So I'm just sharing whatever little worked for me. So don't be hesitant of any nature to ask any question. Okay, everything is on the table. Please. It's okay. You can sit. Please sit. Right. 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 Okay. Okay. Again, like a very good and an important question. So I always say that prelims is like a Russian roulette, right? Gambling. That things work for you, things don't work for you. I have seen a lot of very good candidates who I know have excellent personality, who can write answers very well, but they're unable to clear prelims because that's the nature of the exam right now. So couple of things which I have learned regarding prelims is that one, you need to have a proper mastery of all the previous year questions. And when I say previous year questions, I mean at least 25 to 30 years. So there are a lot of books which are available in the market. I think I used the book by Mrunal. It's by Disha publication, and it has all the previous year questions sorted according to the subject wise. Read the previous year questions, reread the previous year questions, and then reread them again. For prelims, you should cram all the previous year questions And by that, I mean that apart from, for example, let's take a question of modern history. I think this year or previous year a question came that who wrote the book Songs of Fire, I think, or Songs of Jail, something like this, right? And after that, there were 4 options which were given. The correct answer was Mahatma Gandhi. But the 4 options were, I think, Sarojini Naidu, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and one another freedom fighter. So apart from this question, which you should know, that Songs of Fire have been written by Mahatma Gandhi, you should now know what are all the books which are written by Mahatma Gandhi ji. You should now know what are all the books written by Sarojini Naidu, all the books written by Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Because if you closely read the previous year questions, you will realize at least 10 to 15 questions are coming directly or indirectly from previous year paper. Last year, I remember when I had given the prelims, there were at least 3 questions which were directly copy-paste. There was this one question that in economics, which of the following situations will lead to an increase in inflation in the economy? The correct answer was printing more notes. This question has been asked twice, in 2013 and once I think 2007 or 8. There was this another question in polity, I'm forgetting the question. It was directly word to word, option to option picked up from 2015, right? And if you look at pre-score, what happens, right? If the cutoff is 90, most of the people are stuck near 85 to 90, right? All of us fail prelims by 2 or 3 marks, 5 marks at the best. But if you have a good mastery of your previous year questions, this gap of 5 marks can come very comfortably. You can bridge this gap and you'll be able to clear prelims. So that is there. Another thing apart from previous year questions is that whenever you study for the exam, and see, this is something which really worked for me, is that study everything from a cost benefit analysis. Now, what do I mean by that? You only have limited time and the syllabus is humongous for UPSC. I think it's practically impossible for any person to complete the entire syllabus. I have given 2 attempts. I have been in the process for 3 years. I think I've only completed 70% of the syllabus till now. To give a few examples, art and culture. I think most of the people who do art and culture, they read Nitin Singhania, the book by Nitin Singhania. It has some 23-24 chapters. I have only read 3 chapters of the book till date. Why have I done that? I know that art and culture is weak for me. I know that even if I spend 100 hours reading art and culture, I will not be able to remember it because that's an inherent weakness which I have, right? So it's very important to identify your weaknesses and your strengths. I knew that my strength lies in polity and economy. So I would be giving a lot more time on polity and economy, and of all the prelims questions which came in the previous 2 prelims, I knew 95% of the polity and economy questions. Even with the prelims this time, when I saw the paper, I knew almost entirety of prelims and economy. I did not know art and culture. I mean, I can very openly admit that I did not know art and culture from prelims of this year. But that's something which worked for me, right? Because at the end, you only have to get 40% score, 45% score in both prelims and in mains. So whatever little time you have, you identify your strengths and weaknesses, give more time on your strengths. I'm not saying completely ignore art and culture because there'll be at least 4 questions which will come in mains, right? Have a basic understanding of it so you're able to write an average answer for whatever your weakness is, but concentrate more on your strengths. So that's something, I mean, which really worked for me. You can think of trying it. Any other question? Okay. Please.
What kind of approach should be adopted for current affairs?
Okay. Again, like a very good question, and I think a question which everyone struggles with, and maybe I still struggle with that question. So first, try to understand the importance of current affairs for the exam. I genuinely believe that a lot of coaching institutes in Delhi, they have created a hype around current affairs, that current affairs is the most important thing which is needed for the exam. Current affairs is needed, you cannot discount the importance of it. But remember, it's not the most important thing. Right? I say that because I see a lot of students who, if are studying for 10 hours, they're studying only current affairs for 7 hours. Don't do that. Again, look at the previous year questions. For example, look at prelims, right? In prelims, out of the 100 questions, there will not be more than 10 to 15 questions which are directly related to current affairs. There will be a lot of questions which are indirectly related. But directly picked up from current affairs, there will be 10 to 15 questions. Think of subjects like modern history, right? It has absolutely no connection with current affairs as such. Think of polity. Mostly if you do whatever standard books you're doing, say Lakshmikant, that's what most of the people do for polity, right? You can answer most of the questions of polity only by studying Lakshmikant, even if you don't have a very in-depth understanding of current affairs, right? So try to understand the importance of current affairs. Current affairs is really important. I'm not discounting it. But how do you do it? Now, what most of the people do is that they make notes from newspapers. I did not do that because again, I found that the cost benefit is very poor in it. If I'm reading, I used to read the Indian Express. If I'm reading Indian Express for 1 hour, I'll be spending at least 2 more hours on only making notes from it. So I never did that. What I used to do is that I would either follow the monthly compilation, which comes of coaching institutes, or the daily current affairs, which is uploaded by almost all the coaching institutes. My suggestion will be that try to follow the daily current affairs update, which come of any coaching institute. I'm speaking here on the platform of Phoenicia, but I will go on to say that you follow anyone, right? But stick to it and remember that you cannot perfect it. Right? If you try to have a complete 100% coverage, that will not be possible. You only need to know 4-5 points. Do it from any coaching institute, make notes from it, and keep on revising that. So read the newspaper to have an idea of what is going in the world. Don't have to make, at least for me, I never made notes from editorials because again, I found the cost benefit to be very poor from it. Right? I used to follow the daily current affairs or the monthly magazines, do any of that, because monthly magazines are only a compilation of the daily current affairs, right? So don't do the daily current affairs also, and then again don't do the monthly compilation. It's the same thing only, and make notes from it, but follow it religiously. I mean, for example, polity. Even if you don't read polity for 1 month, it's fine. You can still come back to polity. Doesn't happen for current affairs. If you miss current affairs for 1 month or say 1 week, and I mean, I had a habit of compiling newspapers that, I'll read the newspaper again later on. If I'm not able to read the newspaper today, I'll read it later. It never happens, trust me. At least for me, it never happened that if I have a compilation of 7 newspapers that I'll come back to it, वो सीधा रद्दी में जाते उसके बाद. Right? So try to be as religious with current affairs. Maybe with other subjects, you can skip a few days also. Try to follow religiously current affairs. Follow from anywhere, absolutely anywhere. Don't try to cover each and everything. Try to have a basic understanding. For example, we discussed the Agniveer question. Try to have a basic understanding of it, and that's it. Does that make sense? Okay. Also, like a lot of people have this doubt that whether we should be reading the Hindu. I started reading the Hindu one thing which really helped me was that sir from the very beginning would focus, and by beginning I mean class 7th, 8th, and also my parents, they would focus on me reading the newspaper. So even when I was in school, I used to read the newspaper not for the purpose of for the exam or anything, because I just wanted to know what is happening around the world. So I very religiously used to read the Tribune. Even when I went to college, I tried to make sure that I at least know what is happening around the world. So that can be even from India Today website or NDTV website or Indian Express, whatever you want to read, just to have an awareness on what is happening around the world. When I formally started the preparation, I read the Hindu for some time, for around 6 months. But after that, I shifted to Indian Express. I personally found Indian Express to be much better. The vocabulary was relatively easy. The editorials and articles were more balanced. And it was just easy to and quick to finish the newspaper. Also, Indian Express has this really good page called the Explained, which comes daily. I'll suggest that if on a few days you're not able to read the newspaper, at least read the Explained page very, very properly. Hindu also comes with the Explained page, but only on the weekends. At least try to follow those things very properly, because so what happens in Explained is that the material which is provided is from a mains perspective. Let's say recently there was an article on the Places of Worship Act. So can anyone over here tell me why the Places of Worship Act was in news recently? The Gyanvapi Mosque. Before that? Before Gyanvapi Mosque, why was the Places of Worship Act in news? Ayodhya, right? The Supreme Court in the Ayodhya verdict had mentioned that the Places of Worship Act is important for secularism of the country, and now for the Gyanvapi Mosque also. So the way they will give the news is that they will tell what the act is, what are the objectives of the act, why is the act important, what are the challenges or what are the issues which people have with the act, and what can be the way forward. So basically, your entire note about the Places of Worship Act can only be made from that particular article. So try to follow the Explained page very properly for current affairs. Right? Okay. Other questions?
So, what would be the strategy for revising?
Okay.
Should be on daily basis,
हाँ.
weekly basis, or monthly basis?
Okay. ठीक है. So regarding revision, what I used to do when I started preparation was that I had a very broad timeline in my mind. That if I have 4 months left or I want to complete my syllabus in 4 months, I'll divide it, say 15 day, 15 day, 15 day, and try to finish a subject in 15 days. And after I'm done with the subject once, try to revise it afterwards. But this is something which I didn't follow, but maybe you can try it. And I think it's quite useful in retrospect when I look back, is that keep at least 1 day for revision out of your week. So for example, if 6 days you're studying, you're making your notes, you're reading the newspaper, your Sundays should be spent on revising whatever you have written. Because then what happens is that if you're revising, let's say you make a note today on the Places of Worship Act, right? You don't revise it. You'll come back to the Places of Worship Act only, say, before the prelims or before the mains. And by that time, your retention will be very poor. Right? So what you can try is that whatever material you have read in a week, try to revise that on a Sunday. And also for all the subjects, let's say you have completed a subject in a month, try to come back to the subject at least 2 times in a month, if not more. Right? Because again, your number of revisions increase, your photographic memory increases, and it helps you recollect the points better in the examination. Try to revise as much as you can. Try to revise on a weekly basis. If not on a weekly basis, at least the subject, the static subject on a monthly basis. But for prelims, I think you need to at least have it. I mean, it depends upon person to person, but I at least needed the revision of my material 10 to 15 times before I was confident of giving the prelims. So try to revise as much as possible. Just an additional point. I mean, apart from revision, so one thing which really worked for me is that I used to have at least 1 day off. So for example, on Sundays, I will not be working a lot, or at least I'll be taking half a day off. And I think that's something which is really important for the examination. See, remember that a lot of people say that UPSC is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And in case you see runners who run marathon, they don't run on the constant speed throughout. They will increase their speed, they will decrease their speed, they will stop for water also at times, and then they pick up the pace again. So try to follow the marathon strategy over here, that there are times when you have to give a lot of focus. You have to, say, study for 6 hours, 8 hours a day. Then there are a few days where you have to give yourself a little break. I mean, it's completely okay to bunk your Sunday and watch a movie. I mean, don't bunk your coaching institute, but bunk your studies and watch a movie or watch a TV series. The number of TV, I mean, it's not something which I should be saying, but the number of TV series I finished in the last 3 years is probably more than the number of TV series I watched during my law school. And that's primarily because I felt relaxed after watching it, and I felt that I could study better. So it really helped me in getting my focus back on the paper. And by TV series, so I mean, try to avoid very gory or tragic TV series like Game of Thrones, because then you'll get nightmares. Try to watch something which is very light, right? There are a lot of sitcoms which are present over here, which are only, say, 15 minutes long or 20 minutes long. So even if you watch one episode, you'll feel relaxed after that, and then you can go back studying. Again, like sitcoms or something which I like, something else might work for you. Like the people who like dancing, the people who like singing. So make sure you continue your hobby. You have something in your 24 hours which gives you relaxation, so that you can come back to your study again, right? Otherwise, so for example, when I was in Delhi, I used to go to a library. Library is basically a reading room over there. And I will see that there'll be a student which comes at 6 in the morning. They will sit till 12 in the night. I mean, they'll at least study for 18 hours without getting up, but then they will not come for the next 2 days, right? I mean, think of it practically. Is it possible that you study 18 hours a day? I sleep a lot. I need a sleep of at least 7 hours. And if I'm sleeping for 7 hours, I also need my time for other things, right? I can't be studying when I'm eating. I mean, people do that. I don't understand how they do it. I can't be studying when I am, say, taking a bath, right? I can't be studying when I'm speaking with my parents, right? So forget that, you have to study for 18 hours a day or 16 hours a day. I think even if you study for 6 hours, 7 hours, I used to study for 6 to 8 hours. But just make sure that whatever time you're studying, that is very focused. For example, my mobile phone would always be switched off when I was studying, right? If you're sitting, say, from 12 to 3, your books should be around you and nothing else. There should be nothing which should be there to distract you. Otherwise, what normally happens is that, and that's something which all of us face, that we'll be studying, but a WhatsApp ping comes, or a Telegram message comes, or a YouTube video recommendation comes. We watch that for 10 minutes, then we go back to the studies, and after, say, 2 hours, we think that we have studied for 2 hours, but in reality we have only studied for half an hour. So don't try to fool yourself. I used to do it, and I mean that's not something which we should be doing. Whatever time you are studying, just study properly. You should not have any distractions. For example, even if I'm using the laptop, I would preload all the pages which I have to read, and I will switch off the internet, because I don't know, invariably YouTube opens, or WhatsApp opens, and then how half an hour goes, you never know, right? So you try to make sure your phones are switched off, your internets are switched off, and only your books are present. And I think 6 to 8 hours are more than sufficient, provided you're studying in a very focused manner in that time duration. Okay. Other questions? Yes, please. CSAT. Okay, so CSAT, it's becoming quite difficult. I know a lot of students this year who are getting 110s and 120s in their GS, but they're on the line for CSAT, right? And the difficulty level is also increasing. There's only one way you can do CSAT is by practice. So again, I mean, what you can do is that you can try to focus at least on some areas which you think you're strong in. For example, a lot of students are very strong in arithmetic, or a lot of students are very strong in logical reasoning, or say reading comprehension, right? So what you can do is, because at the end of the day, remember, you only have to get 35 questions correct from I think 80 questions which come in CSAT. You don't have to do all the 80 questions, right? So your confidence level in the areas which you choose should be so high that if whatever questions come, you will be able to solve it. Let's say there's a question of Venn diagrams. So personally, I really find doing Venn diagrams quite interesting. I know that whatever question comes in Venn diagram, I will be able to solve it. My mental reasoning, I mean, all of this permutation combination, I'm slightly weak in it, right? So in the CSAT, I would leave that, because I know I only have to do 35 questions. I know that my English is better. I can solve the assumption questions or the conclusion questions. So I would try to concentrate on that. Don't do it the entire syllabus. Pick whatever 40, 45 questions. I mean, 35 is on the margin. At least try to do 50 questions, 50, 55 questions. Pick what you want to do and have a mastery over it and practice. I mean, your reasoning only improves by practice. There's absolutely no other alternative or shortcut to that. Right? Other questions? Okay, I'll briefly also share about, yeah, please. My optional subject was law. I did law primarily because my graduation was in law and I had a familiarity with it. But do you guys have any other questions regarding optional? I don't think there will be anyone over here who has law as their option, right? Don't take law as your option. It doesn't score good. But so regarding, I think, does anyone have a doubt on picking their optional, what optional they should pick? Or all of you are sorted on the optional which you have? Okay, okay, we'll skip that. Any other question? I'll also share briefly my book list. What all books did I do? So I'll start from GS1. Okay, before that, let me just address the question on whether NCRTs are important. A lot of people have this doubt on whether NCRT should be done. Now see, there are some NCRTs which are absolutely crucial, and I will tell you what NCRTs are there. But then the real purpose of NCRTs is to make a base for you. Let me give an example, right? For example, you have polity, and most of the people, I don't know what you guys are doing, but most of the people do Lakshmikant for it. Now, it was easy for me to read Lakshmikant because remember, I have done 5 years of law school. I have read the constitution very closely. So reading Lakshmikant was not an issue for me, but that might not be the case with everyone. This is when your NCRTs become important. So what you should do is, if you're not able to understand Lakshmikant properly, try to pick the 12th class NCRT. If you're well, you can understand 12th class NCRT, it's fine. You don't have to read any other NCRT. If you have some hesitancy, some issues reading the 12th class NCRT, go to the 10th, go to 11th. If you think you're not able to understand 11th, go to the 10th class. Go to 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, or till 6th, I think it's fine. You don't have to go before that. So basically the purpose of NCRTs is that you should have a familiarity or understanding on your basic books which are present, right? For example, say the Working with the Constitution, which is the book on political sciences, I think for class 11th or 12th. It gives you an understanding on how the government functions. What are the different organs of the government? What is the constitution, right? If you don't know what the constitution is, it's very difficult for you to pick up Lakshmikant and directly start reading about the constitution. or if you don't know what the three organs of the government are, or how do the organs interact, it's very difficult for you to directly pick up Lakshmikant and then see that what is the composition of the legislature, what are the powers which are present with the legislature, so on and so forth. So this is the purpose of NCRTs. Regarding my book list, I'll try to go from mains perspective. And I did the same material for pre and mains. I didn't have any separate material. I think try to do that because it's not possible to read two different books for pre and mains. Have an integrated approach to whatever you study, right? For modern history, I only did spectrum, and I again, like as I said, I had made notes of it and I revised spectrum. By now, I have revised spectrum at least 30-35 times. At the end of spectrum, there's also a table regarding newspapers, periodicals, Congress sessions. You should know all of them by heart, and the only way to do is that, I mean, these are things which you have to cram. If I tell you that, you know, you can understand where the Congress sessions happen in what year, no, you cannot. You have to cram these things, right? So for modern history, I did that. For art and culture, I did Nitin Singhania, but I did a very selective reading. Now, again, like how does selective reading work is that you look at the previous year questions. If you look at previous year questions for art and culture, there are always questions on architecture, right? Palaces or locations, caves, pillars. There are, most of the times, there are questions on paintings, right? But there will be very rare circumstance, there's a question on, say, calendar or martial arts or, say, games, right? If every year there are two questions coming from architecture, a question on, say, folk art or folk music will come once in 10 years. So don't spend a lot of time on studying calendars and martial arts and all of those things. Spend your energies very wisely on the topic from which a question is coming. Similarly, you will see that almost all the times, or at least every alternative year, there's a question on coins which come. Even this year, there was a question which came on coins. I think Fanam or something like, in what context Fanam was used in medieval history, right? So there's a question on coins which come. So you should know coins very properly. Even if you skip doing calendars, it's fine. It's absolutely fine, right? But know coins properly. Know Buddhism and Jainism very properly. I mean, if you guys have looked at the previous year questions, every year at least two questions on Buddhism and Jainism. This year also there was a question which of the following are Jain books, right? You should have a mastery on those topics. Okay. Apart from that, there's also NCRT of 11th class from art and culture. So that book is very good to give you an introduction on how to approach art and culture. It has really good paintings and photographs. It helps you in photographic memory also. Okay. For ancient and medieval, I only did Tamil Nadu, class 11th. Again, because I was doing a cost-benefit analysis over here, I can remember modern history very well. I can't remember ancient medieval very well. So I only stick to this particular book and I kept on revising it again and again. For geography, I did NCRTs, and I think NCRTs are very important, class 11th and 12th. Old NCRT, new NCRT, do any. It really does not matter. Right? Whatever you feel comfortable in. I mean, I don't know which one I did. I don't know whether they were old or new. I just did NCRTs. But apart from NCRTs, have some value addition. What do I mean by value addition? Current affairs of geography. Right? For example, in mains last year, there was a question on where all volcano eruptions have happened this year. Right? So that's not something which NCRTs will give you. Your current affairs will give you that. Or for example, your NCRTs will not cover in detail issues like El Nino or Indian Ocean Dipole. These are topics which are coming in the newspaper on a current affair basis, right? So you should do, apart from the NCRTs, value addition in terms of current affairs. Cool. So this is GS1. GS2 polity, I only did Lakshmikant. Again, because that worked for me because I had understanding of law and the constitution. For international relationship, I just looked at the internet and I made some brief notes about not India's relationship with all the countries, but I made notes about India's relationship with that particular region where that country exists. To give an example, I do not have notes on, say, the relationship between India and Tajikistan. I have notes on India's relationship with Central Asia. So in case any question comes regarding those 5-6 countries, the same points can be used, right? Because if you start making notes on all the countries, I think you cannot do that. There are 180 countries. It's simply not possible. And they don't even ask specific questions on all the countries. Even if they will have to ask, they only ask about neighbors. India's relationship with neighborhood, because that's a topic of the syllabus, right? right? So I do have notes on India, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, but for others I only have groupings. Apart from like bigger countries like US, UK, you need to have your own individual notes. So that's how I did. So I made very basic notes and how I followed the strategy of giving different dimensions. By different dimensions, again, what are the political relationship, economic, security. Let me just give an example. I think it will be much better. So recently there was a controversy regarding certain comments made by a spokesperson and how the Gulf countries were now issuing statements condemning India or condemning that particular spokesperson. The question for mains which can come out of it is they will not ask what the statement was made. They will not ask what the Gulf countries said to the Indian high commissioners and diplomats who were called. The question which will come is that what is the importance of the Gulf countries to India, right? And how do you prepare a note on it? Try to think from dimensions perspective. I mean, there are some acronyms for it like PESTEL and all, but what you can do is think about it from syllabus perspective. For GS1, you have history, right? So, are there any historical relationship which India and the Gulf have? Yes, there are. There are a lot of historical connections which India and the Gulf have, right? There are a lot of historical relationships which India and the UK have, or India and the US have, good and bad, right? So that is history is your one perspective or your one dimension. Second is geography. Now, a lot of countries geographically are very, very important to India. Can someone give me an example of any country which geographically is very crucial to India? Why?
Because it acts as a path towards a
Excellent, right? Why is Afghanistan important to us? It's very important to us because Afghanistan is our gateway to Central Asia. If we have to tomorrow import resources, Central Asian countries are resource rich countries. This uranium, gold, other resources, right? If we have to import that, the only land route which is present is through Afghanistan. Iran becomes very important because our Chabahar port is at Iran, right? Again, if you have to go to Central Asia, Iran becomes very important to you, right? So geographically, this is how the country is important. Now go to GS2, right? GS2, I mean, polity is there, international relationship is there. Think about it from a political perspective. Why are some countries politically important to us? Think about United States, right? Can someone tell me why is United States politically important to us? See, both India and US are, India is the largest democracy, US is the oldest democracy. So things like rule of law, human rights, basic fundamental rights which are present, these are things which are present in both the countries, right? So politically, countries like Japan, USA, UK, because we share the same basic constitution, a basic understanding of the polity, they become important to us. For example, there was a question in mains which was asked 2-3 years ago that there's a lot of convergence and divergence between Indian and the English judicial system. Otherwise, you will never prepare an answer or a note on such a concise topic. But if you think about it politically, there are a lot of similarities and divergences which are present between India and UK. We have a written constitution, they don't have a written constitution. We have the rule of law, they also have the rule of law. We have the constitutional supremacy over there, they have parliamentary supremacy over there, right? So this is how you can think politically why they are important. Going to GS3, economics. Why are the Gulf countries economically important? We have a huge diaspora over there. India gets 80 billion remittances every year from these countries, from across the world, and 60 to 70% is coming from the Gulf nations, right? So how important do the country become for us economically? Think about it from energy security perspective. Most of our natural gas and oil come from the Gulf countries, right? We import our oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, gas from Qatar, right? If tomorrow they say that we'll be stopping your supply, then our resources will end, we'll have an energy insecurity in the country, right? So this is basically what I mean by thinking about it from different dimensions. So how much time do we have? Okay. GS3 for, so GS2 this was mostly it. GS3 for economics, I did this module by Brunal. He teaches on Unacademy, but he also has free YouTube lectures. I only watch the free YouTube lectures. And he also gives printed notes. So that is something which I did. For environment, I did a selective reading of Shankar. Again, by selective reading, I mean that I looked at the previous year questions. There are questions on wildlife which come. wildlife sanctuaries. There are questions on tiger reserves which come. So I made sure that I have plotted all the tiger reserves across the country on a map, and I used to look at the map regularly. Also, what I would do is that if there's a tiger reserve, say Kaziranga, I should know what rivers are passing through Kaziranga. Right? I should know that apart from tigers, what other animals are present in Kaziranga. Right? Another approach which you can do is, which I think is really beneficial, is that make a map of the entire India state-wise. So, for example, you pick a map of Punjab only, highlight what all rivers are going through Punjab, highlight what all sanctuaries are present in Punjab, what animals are present in Punjab. This way you will have 28 maps, right? And by those 28 maps, your entire country will be covered across the length and the breadth. Right? But make sure that, see, again, every year there's a question which has to come on Tiger Reserve Wildlife Sanctuary. What we do is that we'll try to read some other material, some other high-end material, and miss these easy questions which come. These are questions which you know will come. A question on Tiger Reserve will 100% come in the next year prelims, right? So prepare for this. These are easy marks which you can very easily get these marks. So make sure your mapping is very good in for geography. Apart from environment, I did a selective reading, and apart from that, I used to follow current affairs, because again, look at previous year questions. For environment, current affairs become very important because most of the questions are from current perspective. I think 2 years ago there was a question that where cheetahs are being relocated in what national park cheetahs are being introduced in the country. That's something which was in news throughout the year. Right? So you should know this. Last year I think there was a question which came on I think Satyamangalam Tiger Reserve, because there was a question because eviction of tribals was happening over there. Right? Current affairs perspective. So for environment, current affairs becomes very important. Okay? Apart from that, internal security, do from anywhere. I mean, pick up any notes, any coaching institute, your own notes, just do from that. Keep on updating using current affairs. Disaster management, again, I did not have very specific notes. I just had a broad understanding on what a disaster cycle is. For example, a disaster cycle is that a disaster happens. First, you do relief work, you do rescue work, then you, I think, do rehabilitation of all the loss which has happened, then you prepare for the next disaster. So for any question which comes, use the disaster cycle. For earthquake, you'll follow the same process. Volcano, you'll follow the same process. Floods, you will follow the same process. So by doing only the disaster cycle, you can cover all the disasters. You're reducing your own work, right? So that's there. Ethics. So I watched some videos on Telegram, but ethics, one thing which you should do is that make sure you have very good notes, or at least understanding of all the syllabus words. So for example, if there's a question on emotional intelligence, you should know what emotional intelligence means. And one problem which I find with a lot of people is that they try to complicate ethics unnecessarily. Remember, ethics is the most easy subject which is present there. Even if you don't read and still go and attempt ethics, you can still get a very decent score. Because, right, you don't have to know anything. For example, let me ask you guys, right? Why is emotional intelligence important for an administrator? Why is emotional intelligence important for an administrator? And emotional intelligence generally means that you are aware about your own feelings and the feelings of others with whom you are interacting. So can you tell me, I mean, all of you want to become administrators, why is emotional intelligence important for an administrator? Sorry? You can take a balanced approach. Good. What else? I mean, why should you be aware of your own feelings? Let me put it very simply. Why you should know that what are you thinking right now? Okay, let's say you are an administrator, right? You have a fight at home. You are very angry. You go to the office and you take that anger out on your colleagues. You have very poor emotional intelligence, right? Because your actions in your office are being guided by something which has happened at home. And if you do that, of course, you cannot be a good administrator. Or let's say someone, as an administrator, there are a lot of people who come to you, and when people are angry, it's that time when they come to the administrators, right? If you're emotionally intelligent on what makes this person so angry, you can address their concerns relatively well. You have a team of 15 people, right? You want to extract work out of them. You need to be emotionally intelligent that what are the capabilities of these people, how do they operate, and then try to get work out of them. Okay? Let's say if a person has a medical emergency at home and you tell them, no, you have to sit till 12 in the night and finish the work. Does it make you a good administrator? It does not. Right? So that's why emotional intelligence becomes important. Right? So again, I mean, this is not something which you can, I mean, definitely, yes, you can read it in a book, but even if you think of it otherwise, right, you can very well jot down points on ethics. So keep ethics very, very easy. Do any material, keep the definitions very easy, but make sure you cover all the syllabus words very properly. Right? Okay. Other questions which you might have. I think we still have 5-10 minutes. If you guys have some other questions. Okay. So I have given 2 interviews, and fortunately I was able to get decent score in both the interviews. And I think Umesh sir really helped me in the interview process. So in the first attempt, the first interview, I had got 184 score, and in this attempt, I got 193 scores on the interview. So very briefly about one thing, I mean, there are a lot of YouTube videos and WhatsApp forwards which come, right? ये question IAS के exam में पूछा गया था, ये question IAS interview में पूछा गया था. Nothing like that happens. All of that is complete nonsense. The interview is a very enjoyable process. Remember that when they're calling you for the interview, they are calling you because they have invited you. They want to check on what kind of person you are. It's you who have qualified the mains. You have shown your own competence, and they just want to have a very normal conversation. So this time when I went for the interview, my board was Dr. T.C. Anand sir. He was the chief statistician of India previously, a retired bureaucrat, and my interview went for almost 30 to 35 minutes. There were 5 members in the panel, one the chairperson of course, 2 male members who I presume, I'm not sure, but I think one of them was a civil servant, the other one was from the armed forces, and 2 female members, one having a background in law, the second I'm not sure about. Most of my interview revolved around my hobbies. So one of my hobby which Umesh sir really helped me is vexillology. Vexillology is the study of flags, jhande. How are flags made? What is the history of flags, right? So they asked me a question on, can you tell some interesting flag which you recently read about? So I told them that I recently read about the flag of Hyderabad princely state. And the flag, very interestingly, it has a kulcha, a flag, I mean, kulche chole wale kulche on the flag, right? What's the history behind it? The history is that when Asaf Jahi, who was the governor of Mughals in the 18th century, he was going to Deccan to establish, to become the Mughal governor. Some Sufi saint tells him that you will become an independent ruler and your 7 generations will rule Hyderabad. Both of the prophecies came true. When he was going to Hyderabad, he was only going to become a governor. But so were the circumstances, he ended up becoming an independent king of the Hyderabad princely state. And his 7 generations ruled Hyderabad, after which Operation Polo happened and Hyderabad was incorporated in India. So in that memory, the flag of the Hyderabad princely state had a kulcha on the face of it. Right? Then they asked me a question on the history of the Indian flag. They asked me a question on Madam Bikaji Kama, who I'm sure you guys will know was a freedom fighter. What was her contribution on the national flag? And interestingly, this is a question which was asked in prelims about 7-8 years ago. Right? So again, see how the knowledge of prelims, me doing the previous year questions, helped me in the interview. So she was the first person in the country to host the Indian flag abroad at Stuttgart. Because I had remembered from the previous year questions, I was able to tell it in the interview, and I think that really helped them at least know that I'm not lying about my hobby. Because what a lot of people do is that they will write a hobby just for the heck of it, right? Because it looks interesting, or because you expect that, you know, they will say that cricket, football, sab khelte, this is not something which other people do, right? But I was able to defend my hobby very properly, although it was a different hobby compared to others. So that really helped me. Then they asked me a lot of questions on Punjab. What are the sociological reasons for the low sex ratio of Punjab? What are the industries which are present in Punjab? Why are the industries not doing so well in Punjab? They asked me a lot of questions on law. Should death penalty be there? What are the reasons behind huge pendency? Because I come from a law background. Then I had done some research on the Supreme Court judgments, empirically looking at the Supreme Court judgments, as in what high courts the cases are coming from, what is the kind of law which is being disputed. We had a good discussion on it. There were a lot of real life situations which they asked. For example, what will you do to increase women empowerment in your district? they asked me questions that India, the NHFS data says that anemia, which is iron deficiency, is very huge amongst women in India. What are the reasons behind it? Then they asked me a lot, I mean, surprisingly, they asked me a lot of questions on sports, because that time India had just won the Uber and Thomas Cup in badminton, right? So they asked me, do you think that because of craze of cricket in India, because of that other sports are not able to do well, right? Because everyone is playing cricket, because of that other games are not doing well, right? They asked me on what should India do to increase the number of medals which we get in the Olympics, right? So I mean, but there were at least 2-3 questions for which I did not know the answer. For example, they asked me a question on what is the difference between tax prudence and tax probity. I did not know the answer for it, and I was very open to say that, sir, I'm sorry, I haven't read about it and I need some more time to read about it. So, which absolutely is completely okay. Just remember one thing in your interview, whenever you guys give, you are not expected to know everything. Still 26 years, 27 years, 28 years, whatever. You have not entered the service, you only need to know very limited, right? If they ask you a question, it's more than okay to not answer. I know a lot of people who could not answer questions, 4-5 questions in a row, but then they were able to answer a question which was in their own domain and they answered it well, and they ended up getting very good scores, more than 200 also. So it's even wrong to say that the UPSC does an interview. They actually do a personality test, because officially the word uses a personality test. So they're not checking your knowledge, they're only checking on how calm you are under the pressure circumstance. That's pretty much it. I mean, to give another example, in my interview, the chairperson, after he asked 2-3 questions on flags, he opened his mobile, and during the entire course of my interview, he was only operating his mobile phone. He was not even looking at me, right? Now, what normally happens is that you will think that the other person is disinterested, they don't want to listen to what is happening, and your confidence reduces because of that, right? But because I knew that this is something which they might do, or even otherwise, my focus remained that I should just answer whatever is being asked to me. It does not matter whether the other person is listening or not. I should maintain my own calm, I should maintain my own composure and confidence, and answer all the questions with the same vigor and enthusiasm as I answered my first question. So that thing really helped me in the interview, and fortunately, the reason I got into the merit list, my interview scores have a huge role to play in it, right? So that was pretty much it. But I mean, don't follow whatever this YouTube videos and your WhatsApp status is. Interview is a very, very enjoyable process. They're just checking on how you are as a person, that's it. I mean, think of the people interviewing you as maybe friends of your father or your grandfather. The kind of respect and courtesy you will show to someone who comes to your house, your father's and your parents' friends or your grandparents' friends, that's the level of courtesy you have to show. You don't have to be like army disciplined over here. They're just looking for. So this is something which a previous topper had mentioned, and I really liked it. They're not checking your knowledge. They're even not checking your personality. They're just checking on how likable you are, right? And your likability does not depend upon the kind of knowledge which you have. I mean, of course, knowledge has a role to play. For example, if they ask a question on how many states are there in India, you should know whether it's 27, 28, 29, right? So knowledge, I mean, definitely has a role to play. But more than that, they're just checking for you on how likable you are as a person. That's pretty much it. Any other question? Hanji. No, I mean, so that's a very personal thing. I was not able to score good marks in law optional, and that's also because, I mean, one issue which I found with law optional was that there's a very small market for it, because the number of people writing with law optional is very limited. It's mostly restricted to law graduates, so there's not a lot of good coaching institutes or material which is present for law optional. So that's something which is very personal to me, and I mean, I just said it in the zest. But just remember one thing, there'll be a lot of people who will say कि इस optional में score नहीं आते, इस optional में score आते हैं, or this optional does not work, this optional does not work. Law did not work for me. There are people who have gotten very good scores in law. Never follow that thing. Or there are toppers from all the optionals, right? Yes, it does happen that some years a particular option is not able to do well, right? But that's not something which you can predict. There are 2 or 3 criteria which should mandate on how your option is chosen. For example, one, whether you have a background in it, and second and most important, whether you have an interest in that subject. If tomorrow you take an optional, say, of medical sciences and you don't have an interest in it, right, of course you will not be able to do well in it. And optional is something which you have to spend long hours reading. So it should be an enjoyable process. So pick up any optional you like, go through the syllabus or even the basic books of 3-4 options, and then make a choice. All the optionals score well. There are toppers from almost all the optionals.
Any other question?
Okay, so very briefly about the essay paper. 2-3 very important things regarding essay. Now what has happened is that essays have become very philosophical in nature. For example, last year in mains there was an essay on the journey of self-identification has become technologically driven. I'll repeat, the process of self-identification or the journey of self-identification has become technologically driven. What do you mean by that? I mean, it's so abstract, right? You can't even understand it took me 5 minutes to even understand what this line means. But once you get an understanding of such a topic, try to think about it from a different dimension. And over here, the strategy I used to do is that I will start from GS1. Think about it from GS1 perspective, GS2 perspective, GS3 and ethics, right? For example, let's think about history. What do you mean the process of self-identification? अपने आप को ढूंढने की, what are your strengths, capabilities? That journey, which earlier would happen, say, by meditation or you doing introspection, talking to others, that has become technologically driven. Technology is driving that. To give an example, like even if we have to meditate, we will not go under a people tree and sit over there. We will use a meditation app to do it, right? Or we'll use a YouTube video to do it. Try to think about this from different perspectives. Like history में क्या हो रहा है? If you're trying to find the history of India, right? What, for example, we want to see what are the kings which ruled, what was the architecture they had. That is being technologically driven. We have carbon radio dating, I mean whatever it is called, to find out what India was earlier. So that's a process of self-identification. Look at political parties, right? Earlier they would go and ask for votes. Now they have political experts, organizations like IPAC, which use data technology to see that where all should be canvassing for votes and how our canvassing of the vote should happen. So the political party trying to identify itself, that is being done by technology now, right? So try to look at all of those things from different dimensions as much as you can. And by that, you will be able to write a good essay. So dimensions are very important. Read a lot of topper copies. I must have read at least 100-150 topper copies for essay, and I would directly copy their introduction and their conclusions. Right? Try to look at a few introductions. For example, most of the people have their introduction using a story or an anecdote. I would just copy stories and anecdotes from previous year toppers and use that. And have such stories and anecdotes which are general in nature. You can use it across the spectrum for different essays. Similarly for conclusions, similarly for quotations. It's very difficult to remember 100 quotations. Remember 10 quotations which are general and wide in nature. Right? And try to use that in your essays and give as many dimensions as you can. And read a lot of topper copies.